Hey everybody, ABC 10 meteorologist Brenden Mincheff here, and we're going to talk about another drought update and the Colorado River. It's been a little bit since we talked about it, and that river basin has seen a lot of rain and snow as well. So we're going to give an update on the river and how they're doing after the wet winter that all of the Southwest has seen. But we'll start here in California. The drought monitor has not changed since last week's update, so still 65% of the state is not in any drought at all. Abnormally dry still covers about a quarter of the state, 25% there. And then the moderate drought category, just about 9% of the state, parts of the desert down here in Southern California, and then also right up along in Siskiyou County in far northern California. That's about it in terms of drought that still exists. And remember, technically that abnormally dry category is not drought. That's recovering or entering drought. So really we can consider only about 9% of the state of California in drought as of this recording. So we compare that with February 4th of 2020. That was when the drought monitor was even better than it is now. So that drought score back then of 34 and the drought score this week is 43. So again, this week's map is the best it has looked since February 4th of 2020. Talking about the rainfall that we've seen in downtown Sacramento this month, it's just under 2/10 of an inch of rain. Normally we've seen over an inch at this point. So we are below where we normally are on the month of April. But when we look at the water year as a whole, total so far is over 25 inches. And normally we've only seen 17.5 inches. So our departure from normal overall, talking about the water year that started on October 1st, is over 8 inches to the good. So that's obviously good news that we continue to stay on the plus side of things as the wet and rainy part of our year really starts to wind down at this point. So precipitation totals across the state, some parts of the state, including Southern California, have added to it just a little bit, about 23.5 inches in LA since October 1st, about 13.75 in San Diego since then. South Lake Tahoe, over 34 inches liquid water equivalent. So everywhere in blue is in the positive side of things, and that's how much positive they are. So LA, almost a foot to the good above average right now. Santa Barbara, over 11 inches. San Francisco, also about a foot above where they normally are to this point in the water year. Again, that is plus, right? So that's not total. They've not seen 11.96 inches in San Francisco. That is how much above average they are right now. It is 11.96 inches in San Francisco. So Sacramento, about 8 inches above where they normally are. Stockton, about 10 inches above normal right now. Palm Springs, still just a little bit below average, but by less than a quarter of an inch. I want to share this video. This comes from Jay Martin of Siskiyou.news. He was contributing some of that footage we saw in last week's drought update about the Scott River Valley and how they're still in drought, right? And they're asking the state why they're still in drought. So I want to share this video, and you can see the Scott River is this river here, the one that's flowing into the Klamath. So you got the clear water kind of meeting the dirtier water, but it's not dirty as in it's polluted. It's dirty. It's just carrying a lot of minerals, things like that, making it look a little murkier, right? So you can see the Scott River flowing into the Klamath River. And I just think this footage here is really nice. And thanks for sending the footage. And of course, you can send me the footage too. You can send it through the ABC 10 app, or you can email it to me. I want to see it, right? No matter where you are in the state, I would love to see how the water situation is looking at where you are. But talking about snowpack, this is still going to be an issue really as we go through the summer months, right? Because of how much snow there is still up there. Look at this, Southern Sierra, 322% of the average to date. So we're not talking about the April 1st average anymore. We're talking about the average as of April 21st, right? And so that's a big deal because it's still lingering up in the Southern Sierra. In fact, snow is still lingering across all of the Sierra right now. But here's the thing, we're about to see much warmer temperatures. In fact, by the time we get to Wednesday and Thursday of this coming week, we could be 10 to almost 15 degrees above where we normally are for high temperatures, right? By the end of this period here, this forecast period for Thursday, the average high temperature is 77 degrees, and the forecast high is 91 degrees. And this is for Sacramento. And so you can see as we're going to be that much above average, that's really going to start to eat away at that snowpack. And so the rivers are going to be running higher. They're going to be running faster. But what we also really need to talk about is those rivers are cold, right? This is snow melt water. This isn't just water, not just rainwater. It hasn't been, baking under the sun all summer long. This is deep water, and this is cold, cold snow melt water. And for that reason, even when temperatures are in the 80s and 90s, this water is still going to be quite cold. 56 degrees is about what the Sacramento River in Sacramento is right now. The American River below Folsom, about 48 degrees. The San Joaquin River at Vernalis is about 59 degrees. The Tuolumne River in Modesto, 52 degrees. And then in the Sierra and the foothills themselves, all the waterways are between 32 degrees and 49 degrees. So even if you are a strong swimmer, it's important to practice good safety around these rivers. And really the recommendation right now is just really not to get in the water, not to go swimming in these waters unless you're shallow and you're kind of staying near shore, because even if you're a good swimmer, right, when the water is this cold, it's going to make your muscles really weak very quickly. And so that's going to make it very difficult to swim. And again, that's even if you are a strong swimmer. Let's talk about another river, though, the Colorado River, right? This is the drought map as it looked on October 1st, and you can see the river in blue there. So again, this was October 1st. Here's what it looks like now with the very latest update. So we still have not made a lot of progress on the eastern plains of both New Mexico and Colorado, but we've made a huge amount of progress beyond that, right? So on the west side of the Rockies, in the Great Basin area, and then also, of course, in the state of California. So let's put some numbers on this map now. The improvement that we've seen since the start of the water year, we've gone from 237 on that drought score down to 57. That's good. 0 is no drought whatsoever at all. 500 is the absolute worst it could be. And then as we look at the percentages here, no drought, dry, and then moderate, severe. There's no extreme or exceptional drought anymore in the Colorado River Basin. The severe drought still 3%, but that's down from about 27%. The moderate drought down from 28% down to about 13% right now as it stands. And then remember, the abnormally dry category is not technically drought, and that number went down from the start of the water year from about 26% down to 21%. So again, great news, making a lot of progress there. And as we look at the actual precipitation numbers, right, the average, how much has that area seen? I've picked out 3 specific ones here. So for the water year to date, which again started October 1st, the Colorado headwaters, 147% of average, the upper Colorado, 140% of average, and then the lower Colorado near Lake Mead is 182% of average when it comes to precipitation. So this is kind of flowing downstream, right? So this is the west side of the Rockies in Colorado, and then we're kind of in the Utah area, above Lake Mead, 140%. And then once we get to the lower Colorado, that's when we're, again, low on the river, further downstream, closer to Lake Mead, right? 182%. So it's been a positive water year, right? But it's kind of been just kind of a temporary reprieve because we've been suffering through a very severe drought along the Colorado River for much of the 21st century, in fact. But also you can see just how bad it was in January of 2021. The score was 447 out of 500. And again, that was just a couple of years ago. And so we're still kind of making progress on this individual drought. But when we look at the bigger picture, and again, this is just since the year 2000. When we look at that bigger picture, you can see how often the Colorado Basin has been in drought. So this is January 19th, 2021. That was when it was at its worst, 477 on the drought score. This is what it looks like now, down to just 57. And you can see that extreme and that exceptional category drought is completely gone at this point. We made a lot of progress, especially on this water year specifically, but it is just temporary progress. And it's really important to remember that this is just one water year. We're not going to be able to refill the massive reservoirs that are Lake Mead and Lake Powell in just one wet winter. I mean, literally, Shasta is many times smaller than Lake Mead. Lake Mead is a huge reservoir. It can hold water for so many millions of people, and it is so very important to the Colorado River system. And so, you know, we talked a few months ago, back in January or February, about the Colorado and the issues that it had. Well, now that we've had that wet winter, now that we've had all that rain, all that snow, we talked to an expert to see how things are going. Here's what he had to say.
Despite one heck of a winter, we have the 2 largest reservoirs in the United States, Lake Mead and Lake Powell, that are down less than 30% of capacity.
Dr. Jack Schmidt is a professor and director of Colorado River Studies at Utah State University. It would be an understatement to say he's been closely following the issues on the rapidly dwindling river.
The reservoirs of the Colorado River system are so vast that you would need 4 or 5 more years as large as this one to refill the system. So in contrast to the stories in the Sierra and in California, where the reservoirs are refilling just this year, it would take many additional years to refill the Colorado system because they're so large. And so where that leaves us is the need to make fundamental changes in the law of the river to negotiate strategies to reduce consumptive use.
The clock is ticking very loudly for users and managers of the Colorado. The wet winter came at a very fortunate time, but it's a temporary reprieve.
Well, I think that human nature being what it is inevitable that at the same time that this year's wet conditions have given us time to negotiate a more thoughtful agreement, they also might lead to some people saying, well, maybe we don't have a crisis at all. And so the question really before us is, do we squander the opportunity that's been given us by nature to more thoughtfully develop an adaptive solution that takes advantage of this wet year? Or do we just ignore it, keep spending money out of the bank account as if it were the good old days, squander the supply, and then live on the edge of crisis again? That's essentially what happened between 2008 and 2020. We had a big, huge drop in the water system in the first 8 years of the new millennium, and then we never fixed the problem. We lived on the edge, and then we had another big drop. We can't do that again. And today's runoff, since the year 2000, so a little more than 20 years, the natural runoff of the Colorado River system is 32% less than the runoff in the system in the 19-teens and 20s when the compact was negotiated. Everyone recognizes that consumptive use needs to decrease to match supply. That's a no-brainer. The debates and issues is that everybody looks at the other guy and says, yep, we got a problem, you make the cuts. That's the problem.
Going back more than 100 years, management of the Colorado has fallen to the 7 Colorado River Basin states in what is known as the Law of the River. But so far, California and the other basin states cannot come to an agreement on the current issues.
And right now, the states have not reached consensus. So the role of the federal government is to say, well, if the states can't reach an agreement amongst themselves, we're going to have to mandate a solution. The reality is that the federal government has not offered a solution. The federal government has said, if you guys don't reach a solution, we will, but they haven't offered a solution themselves. Some of the states have been much more sympathetic and encouraging and hoped that the federal government would step in. I've heard that said, certainly at least by Arizona and Nevada. But I think that we've lived for about a year with the federal government always threatening, we're going to step in, hoping that that leads the 7 states to reach agreement. That hasn't happened yet.
The Bureau of Reclamation recently put forth 2 alternatives to managing the Colorado going forward, one of which involves an even percentage cut for each of the states to make, regardless of water seniority rights.
The one thing that is unambiguous is that cuts must be made and they must be large. I would estimate that cuts have to be on the order of 15 to 20% reductions in use. The problem in the debate is who is going to take the cut. I think that everyone is a realist that the reductions have to be made to match the supply. The issue is simply who's going to take it.
From the Golden State perspective, though conservation efforts and cuts are already underway, California feels that the majority of the difficult cuts should be done by states with junior water rights like Arizona. California has the most senior Colorado River rights and understandably does not want to give those up.
You can ask the question, how much alfalfa and pasture grass should we be growing in the Imperial Valley, the Palo Verde Irrigation District, the Coachella Valley? And maybe we don't need to be growing that pasture grass for livestock and dairies or overseas export in the summer. We certainly need to have those areas be primary vegetable crop growing areas in the winter. But that's where the big changes are going to have to be made. And the difficulty in making those changes is that those are the most senior water rights. So the people who use the most water in the state of California, which is agriculture, not metropolitan water district, are the places that are protected the most by the laws of the country. You've got to find an economic solution for places like the Imperial Valley. And then you have the added problem of the Salton Sea. So I think it's a gross oversimplification to say California is the problem.
So as the clock ticks louder, how much hope does the doc have that a sustainable solution will be reached?
I'm teaching a course right now called The Future of the Colorado River. It is a challenge for me to talk to young people and give them hope. I can't stand in front of young people and tell them that we're screwed. I have to believe that we'll get out of this with some very large reductions in use and very significant changes. But it will be very hard to accomplish that. But I have to believe that we can do that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be a college prof.